Welcome to On the Bench with Brent Schlenker. Today, he will be tying Walt'S shrimp, which is one of his favorite lake flies. We will be using a curved Scud hook size 12 and 8/0 olive tying thread. Tail will be light olive grizzly hackle fibers, adding fine green wire for ribbing. For the shellback, we are using Scud back in light olive. Body is Ligas Scud dubbing in olive and amber colors. Let's go to the vise with Brent.
Well, folks, here we are at the bench. We're going to bring you this freshwater shrimp today. Like we mentioned, it's a great pattern. To start, I'm going to grab a webby hackle with the back. I don't use any of this good hackle at the front. I'll use that for wet flies and so forth. This is just not much of a saddle hackle, but these feathers work just fine for all this kind of stuff. Here's a nice webby kind of hackle in there. We use that for these tails. And, there's always uses everywhere for whatever we're using. So I'll get my hook dressed here with the 6/0 olive thread. Then I'll come around the corner with my tail. I'll make sure I get a pinch, make sure those tips are kind of lined up nicely. Measure that up. And that'll be tied right down around the corner. Right there. Cut those butts off. Now I'll come in with some wire. This is just extra fine. This is green. If you can use silver, gold, whatever you want, but green's good. Black, you can use whatever you like. Kind of adds a little bit of the coloration to the pattern too. Okay, then I'll get my Scud back in here. This is just a 2mm. This is a narrow Scud back on a size 12. This is what size tied mostly, or fish mostly down our area. You will get them into 14s, I know, when you get into BC. Go to a lot of the smaller shrimp. This is a 14. What I'll do there is I'll put a little glass bead in that, but I won't rib the body. I just leave it flat like that. I just stretch it over and tie it off and pick it out. And that's a good little, so that one's what I do for the smaller ones. And I don't do that, put the bead on these bigger ones, because when I rib it with the wire, it'll actually make that bead stick out too far. It just doesn't fit the body. It doesn't work. I just got to use my 2 colors of dubbing. Walt Lawson, my mentor, he tied a lot of these over the years, and we fished these patterns in our guide trucks all the time. We had a lot of lakes that were very, very prolific with shrimp. And you have to fish shrimp. Shrimp lakes are the toughest lakes you can find, I think. So many guys would have to agree with that. They can fish very, very difficult. Because the trout are really not, I guess the way I put it is they just swim around basically in the weeds. Well, in the weeds, there's no question about that, because that's where the shrimp live. And they don't have to chase them. They just go around like a little Pac-Man in there, and they can just gather them up at their leisure, just chomp considerably. And you see those fish, when they've been on shrimp, there'll be stuffed full of them. So that's why I like to put that little hot spot in the middle there for a pregnant shrimp, kind of just make it stand out a little bit from the others. And generally the way I fish that, so I'm kind of putting a little thicker at the back and a little thinner at the front, get a little more of a shape. And then when I pull my Scud back over, I want to pinch that off between my thumb and my finger here, so it doesn't get away on me. Get some good turns, tie it back over itself, and then get my whip finish in there. And then don't cut your thread yet, we're not done. Then I can cut that Scud back off. Okay. Now we're going to take a few turns with this wire, just give a little segmentation. See, if I'd had a bead, that would be sticking out. Now it wouldn't be coming in flat like it belongs there. And then we'll just rib our body. And that really, it's a very good imitation of a scud. Freshwater shrimp, whatever you want to call them. We had some lakes. I remember wading into some of those lakes. We walked out, and your waders were completely covered with shrimp hanging on them. They were just thick. And those fish got big, but they were tough to catch. I would throw this in with a floating line and a cork, and right in the weeds. Or if the weeds are really choked tough, like very thick, then I would just throw it just by the edge of the weed bed. And you're going to do just fine with that. Those fish will be fussy, but you're going to be in the game, don't worry. And that's why it's always unweighted and just doesn't have to be stripped. You can just leave it hanging there if you want. And you can give it a little twitch once in a while. That's fine, but that's about it. Put a little head cement on there and Bob's your uncle. So make sure you got some of them. 10s and 12s, I would say probably have you covered. And thanks my old friend Walt Lawson for tying this one up for us for years. And he was such a nice man to have around our fishing club. And
We appreciate you visiting our On the Bench segment today, brought to you by Brent Schlenker.